Ben Stein and rant the night away. We are joined for the first time. He's a free speech, civil rights, employment, trademark, and he's the law partner with Harmeet Dhillon, who you constantly see on Fox News. Kris Ruby, founder of award-winning PR agency Ruby Media Group, the go-to expert on cancel culture, crisis PR, and the politics of big tech and social media. Welcome to the world according to Ben Stein. Welcome,
You
Kris.
are all very heartily welcome.
Everybody. And of course, this show wouldn't be complete without America's humble servant, speechwriter to 3 presidents, multiple Emmy Award winner, most importantly, husband, but second most importantly, he is the Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein.
Dr. Stein.
Welcome everybody to the show. And Ben, yesterday, I told you this before the show, I woke up to a text from somebody and he said that Trump's house had been raided, and he's a little bit to the right. And I thought, oh, he probably got it from one of these sites. And I went to Fox News. And sure enough, he was telling me an accurate thing that Trump's house got raided by over 30 FBI agents.
There's no Howard Baker among Democrats, and there's no Spine among Republicans.
It's really scary. It's really scary. I'm reminded, as I've often said on this wonderful program that Judah created, President Nixon used to say, the average Republican congressman isn't fit to be dog catcher. And I'm sorry to say we're seeing yet another example of that this very day.
The understanding among the elite that no one shall have power other than they is rock solid today in a way that even during the Nixon era, it hadn't even come close to.
I think there's a lot to that. It's a very unfortunate situation. The Republican Party has gotten to be weaker and weaker and weaker, while the Democrat Party has gotten to be ever more aggressive. And it was a wonderful thing when Mr. Trump got elected, to everyone's shock. It was a wonderful day when that happened, and the Democrats couldn't let it continue, and they have taken it back and then some. And boy, oh boy, do we have a scary situation now where you really cannot count on anything or anyone to tell the truth.
I want to get at Kris on this because she's way more active on Twitter. And Kris, since 2016, the night he was elected, Twitter basically broke down and cried. And for 7 years, it's pretty much, I would imagine the Twitter sphere last night has exploded in jubilee, Kris. I'm not familiar with what's going on, but if you could please tell us.
Well, it really depends on your social graph. So for my social graph, my audience, a lot of people I'm following happen to be conservative. So I'm not seeing anyone celebrating this in my side of Twitter. But I imagine, yes, to your point, Judah, that the other side of Twitter, the more left-leaning side of Twitter, where that's probably the larger majority of the base, they are possibly excited about it. But I think there's some larger issues here. So it's hard to make a generalization that on the one hand, I do believe that the FBI and the Department of Justice is really now being weaponized against American citizens for political gain. On the other hand, we can't say that the entire FBI stands behind this or supports it. I have to imagine that there are some people that really took a job and decided to work in the Department of Justice to do different work than what they are being asked to do right now. I would say the same is most likely true for many people in law enforcement and many people who decided, you know what, I want to join the FBI. This is not what everyone signed up to do who's there. And it has become so politicized. And I think that's the real travesty. The FBI largely exists to prosecute, and they are now using that as a weapon for political gain, and they're not necessarily prosecuting what needs to be prosecuted. They're going after who they are hearing from the higher up that they want prosecuted. And I think the travesty in all of that is all of the people that are behind this, that are actually doing this work in this bidding, that are saying behind closed doors, following the marching orders, but this is not necessarily the career choice that they made. And what we're seeing is now the FBI largely exists to eliminate rivals, political rivals within our own government, which is a scary sight to see. And I think that the larger picture is that American institutions in general are really compromised right now. And where do we go from here?
It's extremely well said.
That's very well said. And where are we now? We're in a very scary situation because the Democrats have the Congress, they have the White House, they have the media, which is a gigantic, enormous enormous function of modern society. And who do we have? We have the people, and the people are something at the local markets, the local corner store, one might say, hats that say Trump 2024. They're already mobilizing to take back the White House from the Bolsheviks. And there's something historic about that. I don't remember seeing that before when I was working for Mr. Nixon. I was on the Nixon train, so to speak, even before I was at the Nixon White House. There is still a rumbling out there of America wanting to be free of the I say I'll use that word again, the Bolshevization of America.
Ron, I want to get to you because Kris really brought up a great point, and I'll let Kris finish with the point. But I grew up watching shows. I'm a kid from Brooklyn, idolizing the FBI, even watching old episodes from the 60s of the FBI with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. And a show that was on for 12 years that you sat at home and dreamed about becoming, if you were a boy, probably a member of one of these organizations. But getting to Kris's point, who's going to join the FBI?
I think Kris's point, there's something I'd like to extract from Kris's point before we talk about the FBI's recruiting problems, which is we all grew up hearing the phrase, "it can't happen here." I don't want to say something facile about the obvious part, but rather what has been really sobering has been watching the way functionaries in the FBI and in the police forces around the country, at many different levels of government as well, have folded. How few people have walked away from those big, fat, juicy government pensions? They will not put that at risk. Who thought that that would be responsible for so much compliance among people that we thought were straight-laced, honest, law-abiding, American way kind of people? They're willing to engage in this kind of stuff, whether it's a thin crust on top or a thick crust that goes halfway down or whatever the percentage is. So where's the deep throat? There's no deep throat.
Well, according to Time Magazine, it was Ben Stein.
There is no deep throat among the conservatives because why? Well, there's no point in it. Carl Bernstein, my childhood next door neighbor, he saw the main chance, and God bless him, he got into it. He made some money at it, clever enough to figure out how the game was played. But the Republicans are not that clever.
I live about 10 minutes from Chappaqua. I don't recall the FBI ever coming here and raiding Hillary Clinton's house with her emails and the servers and everything that went on.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
You're exactly right. DC decided today to not call it a raid anymore. They're calling it a search.
That's very funny.
It came down from the higher ups.
I saw that.
From the higher ups. No longer is it, it's a search.
The war on language continues.
Ben, 40 FBI agents to this man's house, people calling me on the phone, whether it's people in my family, horrified of what's going on. As Kris brings up, this doesn't happen with Hunter Biden. They don't need to do a raid. They have his computer. They knew what was going on. But Ben, this idea that they could come and stormtroop your house with guns. There were people gagged with guns outside of Mar-A-Lago. And I wanted to remind people live in Mar-A-Lago, Ben. This isn't just Trump's residence. This is a club. This is a financial thing for him. This is a place where people actually live.
But they live there, and they live there so they can meet other people there and make money. And the whole thing, someone earlier today said, where's Howard Baker? Follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. It's an amazing thing, but yes, follow the money and you'll find out a lot of things. There's an awful lot to be learned by following the money. And the money tells us that the media can take its giant hose of money and spray it on whoever they want to spray it on. And that person will have a nice house in Beverly Hills. And that person will have an Audi S8, which is the best car in the world. And that person will have a lot of nice cabin cruiser on a lake in North Idaho. A lot of things to have, and a lot different from being a lowly civil servant.
I want to just go back to Kris on this as we're finishing up this point. You really did bring up a great point, and it's a point that people need to keep bringing up about all of the people that haven't been raided, about all of the people that haven't had their day in court, that all of these people that have committed, we don't even know what the crime here is, just like you've brought up, Ben, with Watergate. You still can't say what the crime is.
No one knows. No one knows.
But Kris, to the American citizen,
most American citizens, the middle class, most people I talk to at this point, they want to go to work and put their head down. They're watching what's going on social media. They realize how easy it is to just get completely wiped out of corporate America with cancel culture and everything that's going on. They're afraid to say what they want to say. They're afraid to even do something like this conversation right now. And that's just the state of reality. So I think we have to really get clear about that we are a nation on the decline. And it's not just about this. Okay. Yes.
No, please continue. You're making some very
he's
good
agreeing
points.
with you. Got the stamp of Ben Stein's approval. Go ahead.
I think we are a nation on the decline. And the challenge here is, again, all of these things together. Let's not also forget the IRS and the back and forth about that too. And all of this news coming out at the same time. Most Americans are finally getting back on their feet now after what happened with COVID for over 2 years. And now they hear that, P.S., you may get audited if you're a small business owner after we just tried to, again, wipe you out. How much more can Americans take? At what point are they just going to throw their hands up and say, you know what, socialism is better than this, and this is what America has turned into?
But America has not turned into that. And I will respectfully tell you, if I may, very respectfully, Kris, that my wifey and I go up to North Idaho. It is like being in heaven. There's none of this political Bolshevization going on. There is a friendliness. There is a full-throated cry of greatness about America. Full-throated cry of we are all brothers and sisters here in this greatest thing that's ever been, namely the United States of America, and we are going to make it work. And even if you have to shrink it down till it's just this little, but quite big lake, and the surroundings of it, there's going to be a nugget of America that's going to still be there.
And that's beautifully said. The problem is they don't get people elected. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Benjamin Jeremy Stein. We are joined by two brilliant people tonight. Ron Coleman, partner of Dhillon, podcaster, Twitter aficionado, and you've won quite a few landmark cases, Ron.
A couple.
Just a couple.
That's fabulous, Ron. You should be very proud of yourself. It's fabulous.
Thank you, Ben.
Judah, I want to go back to a point that Ben was making because I think it's interesting. He's talking about the geography and how that shapes your view of America. And I think there is something to be said about this social media ecosystem that people like Ron and myself live in. Ben is bringing up an important point about geography. People who are living in social media every day, that breaks down the barriers to geography, but it also impacts how you view America and the politicization of America in terms of what you can say and what you can't say. We're living in a world every day where we're afraid we're going to get thrown off a platform. We're going to get a blue check removed simply for saying an opinion that we believe.
And that is why I say that first of all, I'm old. I'm 77 years old, and I live with my wifey. And my wifey and I agree about everything. And we have been together since 1966. We have been together forever. And we are our own little cell of America as it used to be in the 50s. And we will stay that way until we die.
Kris Ruby, where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at sparklingruby, or my site is krisruby.com or rubymediagroup.com.
And it's a great site.
Kris, I'd like to ask you, Kris, if I may, respectfully, where are you from, Kris?
Westchester County, is that what you mean?
Yeah, is that where you grew up?
I went to Boston University's College of Communications, and I majored in public relations there. Then I moved to Greenwich, Connecticut afterwards, and then to the West Village in Wall Street. And now I'm back here. But I also lived in Los Angeles when I was at BU, which is how I know Judah.
There you are. And without Kris, this show would not be possible tonight. For introducing Ron Coleman.
I've learned a lot from a lot of the discussions I've had on my own podcast. And among the things that I've learned is about the method that was used by the Communist International, beginning in the 1930s, and then through the 50s and 60s, when they realized that they would never be able to raise class consciousness in America, because America had real economic opportunity. Nobody thought of himself as working class unless he really wanted to. And if you were working class, you aspired realistically to become middle class, and then you aspired realistically to become a boss.
And it's a great thing to be a boss. It's really a great thing to be a boss. But I will go back to what I was saying before. This country is so great. It's unbelievable. It's
Yes, it
absolutely
is.
unbelievable.
I'm not sure people feel it's so great right now.
I know there are some people who don't feel that I know that, Chris, and they're very ignorant to think that.
Are they?
Yes, they are. This is the most incredibly great country there's ever been. Turn on TV and watch the documentaries about World War II, about terrible, horrible, unspeakable things were done by the Nazis against us Jews. And I think to myself, and here I am in Sandpoint, Idaho. And I look out, I have a home with a lake, a view of the lake. It just goes on forever.
So
it's all free. It's all.
But Ben, can I respectfully push back on that just a little bit, Ben?
Don't do it. If you do it respectfully, I'm walking off.
I'm going to respectfully push back just a little bit, Ben, and say, if I'm a conservative growing up today, watching what is going on in this country, watching even just the past week, seeing the news of what's going on with the IRS to the small business, watching this FBI raid, looking at defund the police, looking at all of this at once, I'm not feeling like this is perhaps the greatest place for me. I'm feeling like things are stacked against me. And if I want to be a boss, if I want to climb the career ladder, like you were just talking about, better keep my politics to myself, better not let anyone, because I'm not going to have a chance of making it in America if other people know that, where these institutions are largely liberal led.
So I'm not going to let Ben.
That's a very good point, and very eloquently put. But on the other hand, if I may respectfully say so, day by day, life here is so great, it's unbelievable.
Right, but Ben, everything needs to be put into context. The fact that we have the guy from El Salvador defending Donald Trump, and I don't know if anybody caught this, the president of El Salvador was saying, if I were to do this to anybody in my country, what would you people?
Ben has lived through times and is of an age where his father lived through times when to be able to appreciate America is a lifelong experience. Even if things go south, Ben has acknowledged, even in the course of this conversation, that God has been very kind to him.
Unbelievable.
He's made references to numerous dwellings. He was a movie star. All the great things.
What do you mean? What you mean?
No, Ben.
But Ron, we need to put this in perspective of everyone outside of the four of us, right? You know, we are.
No. So let me finish
Those
my
people
thought.
aren't the four of us on here.
So I'm in between Ben and you in age. I'm a couple of years younger than Ben. I'm a child of an immigrant and an orphan, and I am a boss. I'm a partner in a law firm. I've had the opportunity to appear before the United States Supreme Court. I have 6 grandchildren. I have 4 adult children. And the question that I ask for them, Kris, is the same question you asked for yourself and your, with God's help, progeny, which is, okay, what's going to be for them? Because everyone know, Ben, you came of age in pretty much the best of times.
You bet.
Best of time. And
bet.
people even my age, graduating college in the mid 80s, did not have the expectation. Kris, Kris, I'm agreeing with you, is that there's been a downward slope in the sense of feeling of opportunity. On the other hand, Kris, in many respects, many of the things that bother us the most are the result of arguably a dying spasm of desperation by the Bolsheviks. They actually are on the cusp of losing control. Remember, this is all happening in the context of their just losing both houses of Congress. That's number one. And then in terms of the big picture, they're imposing and trying to impose controls on Americans through the courts, through the agencies, through the police, because we're not going in the direction they want us to.
Ron, I know Kris wants to jump in. And so Kris, you brought this up, jump back in.
I have a lot to say about that. But Ron, did you want to finish? Was there anything else you wanted to say on that?
I
Ron,
never
before-
finished. So you may as well
Here's
continue.
what I want to say. I think as people become more afraid to speak, the pool of, and I hate the word influencer, but I'm going to say it anyway, the pressure on quote unquote conservative influencers, and I wish there was a better word, but by influencer, I mean the people who influence public discourse on social media. Those are the people who are the voice of this new age conservative party online in digital media platforms. However, that balance is completely out of whack. As less people who are conservative decide to speak, more pressure is on the conservatives who do speak on social media. And there is not a day that goes by that those people are not taken out, or at least attempted to be taken out by people. And Ron, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are many ways to take someone out of corporate America. And I think that's the problem. What does it look like to actually rise up in this movement? Well, every time you rise, you fall, and you fall really hard. And when you have big tech that's against you, making sure that you don't speak, that's not the metaphor here. That's reality. And what happens—
that's what I make a living from. That I'm in there, I'm fighting the fight. I'm
but
representing.
what you make a living from, the rest of us lose a living from. How many times can—
well, if we win a couple, we just have to win one or two.
Yeah, but Ron, this is
a little bit of light sheds a great dispels a great deal of darkness.
Ever since becoming louder and louder in this movement, my largest expense has infinitely increased with legal. That's not normal. I rarely hear Democrats saying—
That's a great thing.
In order to speak online, I need to be getting more insurance, professional liability insurance. I need to deal with defamation, slander, libel on a daily basis. I have to deal with cancel culture, people going after my clients and people taking me out. And P.S., an infinite increase in percentage of legal fees. I never hear a single Democrat say that that is what they have to do to just stay in business today. Find me one that says that.
You're completely right, and I want to get to something very. Ron brought up a brilliant point, though, and because Kris, just so you know, I side with you.
But does Ron side? I mean, listen, Ron, if you just— I want to know, do you have a lot of Democrats that come to you saying I'm getting canceled? I want to know.
Democrats don't come to me.
Exactly, this is what I'm saying.
But they don't have to. You're 100% right. They don't have to. They don't have to. But I will tell you that the vast majority of the people that we represent on the right are funded not out of their own pockets, but by either crowdfunding or by generous donors who want to see this country flourish. But that doesn't help the small business person who's destroyed when they're forced offline after Facebook decides that their page has violated some
or like
wrong
Ben,
thing.
Or like Ben here with our YouTube channel. You're getting censored and banned from YouTube. You're the one that got me to have faith in this country as much as I do and believe in the Constitution when this all went down because of the teachings I've had from a person like Ben Stein. We don't get this in the educational system. Kids today aren't broken up by what happened yesterday with the raid. And that should be frightening. People from your generation, Ron, would have been, and people from Ben's generation.
Yeah, but why would they be? This is exactly my point. Why would they be broken up about it? They're not raised to be broken up about it.
That's my point. They're not.
It.
Kids today.
And if they were, by the way, what happens? The system takes them out. This is exactly my point. They don't have that they don't have the choice and the freedom of expression to even be that way if they want to make it in America.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein, and we are having some lively conversations tonight. Just for the record, it's really hot in Los Angeles. We have our Diet Cokes.
We have our Diet Pepsi.
I have my water.
Of course you have your. Of course you have your. Oh, you know, I got to tell you, Ron.
Store brand seltzer, store brand flavored seltzer.
Let me just say, if I may, respectfully,
please.
When I was a child, it was very, very hot all over the place. And you, Madam Kris Ruby, you were an R lawyer. You, sir, were an R lawyer. I was a summer clerk at a very famous law firm called Arnold, Fortis and Porter. Very, very famous law firm. There was no air conditioning. This was like the highest billing firm in Washington, D.C. There was no air conditioning. This is incredible progress that we've made in this country. Incredible, unbelievable progress.
And to Ron's point, we want to keep this progress. Everything they're doing right now is because they know their movement isn't moving.
No, everything they're doing is because our nation is compromised. everything from the top down is compromised. I think that you speak to security experts, you speak to people who see what's know what's going on. We have people who are compromised in this administration. Until that is handled.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
I assume you meant what you mentioned the administration was there's been a tremendous compromise in terms of basically foreign forces, in particular the People's Republic of China, and also Ukraine, a relatively small, relatively trivial power in the world. Any nation state larger than Moldova has enough money, if it's spent wisely, to buy a tremendous amount of influence. There's a lot of money in the world today. And American politicians are essentially negotiable. You buy them. And Ukraine has purchased an entire political party in partnership with the People's Republic of China. That's the level of compromise that I acknowledge over the top, obvious. You talk to people like all our investigative reporter friends who do this kind of work. It's all there. It's all spread out.
And to answer Ben's question specifically, I'm specifically referring to China. A lot of my research is big tech and social media, in particular, the TikTok app. I think is widely problematic right now. It's possibly taking over Google search for millennials as their go-to search engine that they are using. And of course, this is ByteDance in China. Our military is not supposed to be using TikTok, and yet they are. But once again, that just shows this lack of respect for our institutions, which is a common theme and thread that I've been saying all night. And they're using it anyway. And really, it's actually highly addictive. Don't get bet on TikTok because it's a compromised platform. But anyway, Brandon of the FCC is basically trying to remove it from the Apple Store. Trump did tremendous work with trying to remove TikTok and ban it. And what did Joe Biden do? He did the complete opposite. Now, this is really scary because this is the overtaking Google for millennials as what they use. And the reason why this is scary is because this information is compromised. All of that information is, as we know from research, going to China. That can be used by political opponents in a very scary way and to influence public discourse here and, of course, influence US elections. And there's also issues over medical privacy and data as well.
If you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. We've had some great guests tonight, which is Kris Ruby, Ron Coleman.
Can I just finish one thing before we?
Yeah, please.
Ben, the scariest part of all of it is that our faces are being used to train AI for biometric data by people.
Biometric?
Okay, so that's the last thing you wanted to bring up.
That's what I wanted
Biometric.
That only you understand. That go to Kris Ruby.
Ben knows what I'm talking about.
Just go to Kris.
Biometric.
Go to Kris Ruby's YouTube stuff. Watch her stuff. It's absolutely incredible explanations on this. I'm not kidding. I am in awe that she could speak for an hour about this type of stuff. But
I want to know what biometric is.
Biometric. I know, Kris, you had to bring up like this, like,
I can't believe you said we would resolve everything by 11 o'clock.
This is a good crew here, I have to say. The four of us, we should continue. Good group.
Everything is.
Ben agrees.
I was thinking to myself about all the people out there right now who are armed. The loss of trust in our higher institutions is going to create a lot of chaos for people in the FBI, for people in the police department, because so many people are losing trust in them.
Well, I think we've all lost a lot of trust in a lot of institutions in the United States of America. That's why we keep on keeping on. And that's why I end so many of our wonderful shows when you give me the opportunity to do so, to sing "We Shall Overcome," because the human impulse to want to be free and to want to be able to express oneself and to express one's love for one's country and for one's fellow man is so strong that it will overcome even the Democrats' wish to keep everyone under control and stomp on his or her face for all eternity. We're not going to give up. There's no point in our giving up. There's nothing to be gained by giving up. Look, my wife, her father fought in World War II against the Nazis. He was in a battle with the SS in the last day of the war, literally the day that the Germans surrendered. And when his unit won against the unit of the SS, and they were tough, the German commanding officer went up to my father-in-law, Colonel Denman, and spat in his face. And Colonel Denman, Alex's father, a saint, did not shoot him, did not beat him. Colonel Denman's commanding officer handed him a pistol and nodded, pointed in the direction of the Nazi commanding officer. Colonel Denman would not do it because he is a person who believes in the commandments of love as preached by all great religions. And the greatness of a society that would have people like that running small unit warfare for the United States of America is so overwhelming that it overwhelms everything that challenges it.
Extremely well said.
God loves America because it's a nation founded under God. And it has, as Ben acknowledges, as Ben points out, aspired to promote the values that God, in his revealed truth, wants us to promote. We must fight. You're right, as you say. Kris is listening to Ben and saying, "You're telling me a story from 1945. That doesn't help me." But it does, because that is still the ethos. That's the culture. And it's true that our American enemies have done much today to try to undermine and destroy that culture. There's lots of reason to be hopeful. Are we going to have to fight for it? Yep. That's what we have to fight for.
The FBI raid last night on Trump was an FBI raid on all of us. I think that it is a sign of a demarcation and what is to come. And I don't think that that is signifying anything that is positive. So if the change is going to be made, if you believe that that change can be made, great. But if you don't, now's the time to really have a battle plan for yourself, for your business, figure out what you want to publicly say, what you don't want to say, because we have institutions that are against you. You have tech that's against you. And
there's nowhere to run, Kris.
Unfortunately, you have a government that's very much politicized and against you. And to your point earlier about law enforcement and now the DOJ or the FBI, if they have marching orders and that trickles down, whether that's the IRS or any of these other institutions, and you are a conservative, tough times are ahead for you. And that is something to consider.
You're completely right. And listen, I'm really happy we did this show. And I'm really happy, Kris, that you shared what you shared. And we have run out of time. Kris Ruby, please tell people where they could find you.
You can find me on Twitter, Sparkling Ruby, or KrisRuby.com or RubyMediaGroup.com.
Ron Coleman.
All over the place, at Ron Coleman. Can't go wrong.
Perfectly said. And you can find Ben Stein on Truth. And you could also find them at benstein.substack.com, spectator.org. And of course, Newsmax. He's got a new book coming out with Newsmax that he's in the middle of editing. Amazing. Still writing books. Ben Stein. There we are. I want to thank everybody who's going to be listening to the show later on. Ben Stein.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.